Public participation. Now, I have a deputation by appointment, Annabelle Turley, who is zooming in by audio-visual link this morning. And this is regarding item 16, Central City COVID-19 recovery parking charges. It is my intention to move to that item on the agenda after we've heard from Annabelle. I will note that there are no presentation of petitions, so I've dealt with item 4 as well. So, Annabelle, are you online?
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Annabelle, thank you very much for joining us in this most unusual way, and do apologise that you're not able to be here in person while we still remain at level 2. But thank you for being so understanding and to make your deputation. Thank you for your time the other day when you made yourself and other members of the Central City Business Association available to meet with myself, the Chief Executive and the Chief Executive of Christchurch NZ. That's very much appreciated. So I'll hand over to you to make your deputation in relation to the item number 15.
Okay, thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about this parking issue. Right now, the Central City is very, very fragile and it needs immediate support. Before COVID, the Central City was also fragile, and we really don't want it to go backwards. We really need to help protect the businesses in the Central City, because we don't want to see any business at all closing, especially the likes of any of our key businesses in the city, like what is being seen in Dunedin with the closure of H&J Smith. COVID has really set back retail, hospitality and entertainment in the city. All of these businesses employ a number of residents in Christchurch and support families who live in our city. Why we think that the Central City needs extra support compared to the suburbs is that since the earthquake, the suburbs actually have had a number of very good years to fall back on, whereas in the city, all the businesses are in a relative infancy, so they haven't had that luxury that the suburbs have. Also, the city, every business in the city has invested based on the public sector projects which haven't been delivered. I certainly invested on the basis of having a stadium, and I'm just one small family-owned business in the whole city. So I think that that is another reason why we need some support around this parking. We also don't have enough people living in our central city, so that makes all our businesses even more fragile compared to any other city in the country. So what we are asking for is to have the 2 hours free parking in all the car parking buildings in the city until Christmas. We see this as a way of really encouraging the residents of Christchurch to come back and enjoy the city. It gives them enough time to shop and to eat and to explore all of our wonderful businesses that we have in our city. And it also helps protect those jobs provided by those businesses. We don't see that the council can use only its parking buildings and on-street parking as an option, because this would be using the ratepayers' money in an anti-competitive manner, which could be seen as an issue with the Commerce Act. And also we think that this would actually send a really bad signal to the private investors who actually have invested in car parking buildings. So it is really, really important that it's for all Central City car parking buildings, and it is for 2 hours. It's not for all day. We really appreciate that there has been some free parking, but we see that it has been taken up by people who were already coming into the city to work. I had a customer in saying this week that at 8:30 Litchfield was full. So it hasn't worked as it was intended. So for us, we would really ask for the 2 hours free parking in all the car parking buildings across the city until Christmas.
Thank you. Is that the end of your submission, Annabelle?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Tim?
Thank you very much, Annabelle. Just a question with regards to all parking buildings across the city. If the council car park buildings have 2 hours free, technically with the Commerce Commission it's not a financial advantage because it's a cost to us, rather than in the private car parking can, at any time at all, they could have been having free car parking for 2 hours, 1 hour, they can do what they want. So what do you think the risk is under the Commerce Commission?
Well, it would be seen as being like anti-competitive.
But part of that is to have a financial advantage, but having 2 hours free in a council car park building, the first 2 hours free, isn't a financial advantage, it's actually a cost. So the true advantage is getting people into the central city to go shopping. So anyway, thank you very much.
I think that's the discussion, Annabelle, that we're going to be having around the table, is that the advice on cartel provision and Commerce Act compliance, it's variable. So you've taken a particular view of what anti-competitive means, but I think the point Tim was making was that there's nothing to stop business owners who own car park buildings from making their own decision to give 1 or 2 hours free car parking as part of their arrangements. I think what is it called? The crossing car park still gives 1 hour free. Is that right? No, $2 for 2 hours. Yeah, so it is the equivalent of 1 hour free an hour. Well, it's less than 1 hour. It's about 1 hour free compared to hours. Yeah, but so $2 for 2 hours. So it's not a So I guess that's the debate, is whether it is, and the advice that we have is that it would be a breach of the Commerce Act the other way if we were to pay for the private sector car parks. But the question. This is a bigger issue which we need to take some advice on. And we would need to discuss. I think we would also have to consult publicly on it. And in terms of timing, this is a short-term decision until we get a proper parking strategy in place, which is well underway, Annabelle, I can assure you. That's something that can be looked at, but not as a temporary short-term fix is the advice that we have at this stage. But Andrew, you've got a question?
Thank you, Annabelle. Good morning. Thanks very much indeed for the deputation. You've made your position on the off-street parking very clear, and thank you for that. Council obviously has a number of on-street car parks in the central city as well. Do you have a view on whether what you're proposing could or should extend to those on-street car parks? I'm just interested in your views there.
We definitely don't think it needs to be free on street. We have a lot of people in Christchurch haven't got into the habit of using our car parking buildings, and we think this is a really good chance to get people in the habit of using the off-street car parking buildings, because people are used to parking on the street and driving around until they find a park. And we really want to encourage people to use the car parking buildings, to come into the city, to enjoy everything it has to offer.
Great, thank you.
James and Yanni.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. We really appreciate all the work you're doing as well, so take that from all of us. But just with respect to your deputation, I just want to try and use this as constructively as possible. What you really have been speaking to is option C in our paper, which is to extend this incentive to all operators for a period of time. On the basis, as we've heard from staff, if that were to be removed from the equation today, the reality is this is a major change of how we would deliver a service to the community. Now, I, for one, completely agree with it. I think it's a great idea. But that being said, if it was put to one side because you would have to consult on it, which would mean you'd have to go through the long-term plan process, and that's a conversation for another day. Of the other options that we have, what is the preference?
We don't see that there's any benefit in offering free on-street parking. because we do need to get the residents in the habit of using these buildings. A number of people have invested in them. So with regard to the other options, am I able to just say I'm quite strong in the option that I've within the all buildings.
Yep.
Something is better than nothing, but I don't think you need to extend it to the on-street parking.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Annabelle. Just before I go to Yanni, because it's kind of a follow-up to that, if the other car park building's paying 2 hours for $2, would that be, if we match that, would that be something that the association would consider would be a good outcome?
I think it's the perception of free parking is a massive draw card, even if it is, say, 2 hours free parking, and then after that 2 hours, the prices ramp up a lot to recover that 2 hours. I think people would spend more time in the city. If it's, I'm not sure about the 2 hours for $2, because I think it hasn't been taken up as widely as I thought it would have been by our residents. I think that perception of free parking is a massive draw card.
That's incredibly helpful. Thank you very much for that. Yanni?
Thank you, Annabelle, for your submission. I just wondered if the private car parking operators that you're alluding to in your submission are members of the CCBA, and if they are, or if they're not, have you approached them directly about having 2 hours free rather than council paying for it, them just doing it?
Yes, I have talked to some of them about that, and what the message was pretty clear. It shows that they've invested in these buildings, and it shows that it's not at their advantage to be doing this, and they already feel let down because the public sector haven't delivered the stadium, the Metro Sports and the convention centre, which is all things that were expected to be delivered well and truly by now.
We don't know if they're struggling or whether they could afford to do it.
I don't know if they can afford to do it or not. I have, and I can follow up and find out.
It just, I mean, I don't know the specifics, but it would seem to me that some people in the central city, like the big banks, for example, there will be people that are doing really well who would be in a position to also help with the response to what the central city needs. And I guess what I don't sense from your submission or from the report is what those others are doing to help. But that's cool.
Yeah, no, Yanni, I think that Annabelle, you might be getting the message from us that we may. I think it's the advice that we're getting is that the option C has to come off the table because of the extent of the change that it would represent. But that doesn't mean it's off the table for good. It means that it goes into that wider conversation around the parking strategy for the city, and also into the any future conversation around the long-term plan. So, which is when we engage with the community on a much more in-depth basis in relation to the details of our budgets and allocation of finances. But in terms of getting people in, the very strong message, and that's why I thought that your answer to my question was so incredibly helpful, you think that turnover is really critical as well. So you're saying that, yes, I'm getting an impression around the 2 hours, but after that, ramp up the charges because you actually want people to turn around their time in those car parks rather than stay longer than that.
Not necessarily, but I think it's a way that you can recover some of those costs by having a higher rate after the free 2 hours.
Excellent. Look, thank you very much for your time, Annabelle. That's I'm really appreciative, and I know all councillors are, that you've set the time aside to make the deputation this morning. I just wish it was in person, but I'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, no, it's not for Annabelle. It's just on our process of not having her do it in person. Why is that?
We're reintroducing that at the next meeting, I think. We just have to structure the staff in terms of monitoring people coming in and allocating space within the building. It's just being
Right.
super cautious while we're just getting ourselves back on our feet in terms
Okay,
of...
so by our next meeting, we can have live
I think the next
deputations.
meeting will allow for on-site deputations. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It still will be limited seating in the room though. Thank you. Right, so we'll now move to item